Welcome to the Capital News, everybody. I am your host, Alex Kreitis. Thanks for joining me today. We had quite the news breaking from Washington, D.C., everywhere from Bill Barr's nomination confirmation to Andrew McCabe, former FBI director, making the news. Senate Intelligence Committee coming out and saying there's no collusion between Trump and Russia. And then obviously we have the 12th hour coming upon us in regards to the border wall, a national emergency, and will President Trump sign this legislation? So with that said, let's get started. So Bill Barr, the president's nominee for Attorney General, was confirmed today by the Senate in a vote of 54 to 45. He was later sworn in by Chief Justice John Roberts in the Oval Office, where President Trump also was present for that swearing-in ceremony. Bill Barr will now be overseeing the Mueller investigation. So obviously Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker will step aside. I do believe he is going to remain as a senior official within the Department of Justice, but Attorney General Bill Barr will now be overseeing the special prosecutor's investigation, which, if we had discussed on here previously, should be coming to an end. We don't know when, but it should be shortly. It was only a couple weeks ago that Matthew Whitaker claimed in a press conference that the investigation was winding down. As we approach May, it will hit the 2-year anniversary, so I would hope that Bob Mueller and his investigation will produce a report. It will be winding down. And from what I hear on both sides of the aisle, for the most part, that Bill Barr will be a straight shooter. Of course, there were Democrats who did not vote for his confirmation because Bill Barr did not commit strongly enough to them that he would release in its entirety the special prosecutor's report. We don't know what type of information is going to be in there. Is it going to be classified information, which obviously would not be disclosed to the general public in most instances? So Bill Barr made it very clear that he is going to stay within the guidelines and the precedent of the Department of Justice, and I imagine that that will be the case, but of course that will be a soap opera and drama unto itself. But we'll see what happens. I imagine that'll happen probably within the next couple months. Now, the other interesting thing has to do with this southern border wall in this 1,100-page bill that came out of nowhere. Obviously, it was released late last night. There's no way in hell anybody read this whole thing, but I mean, that's par for the course in Washington, D.C. They create these bills. There should honestly be an amendment to the Constitution that prevents bills from being this long. I mean, if you can't get your point across in 100 pages or less, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Or at least make it some sort of law where there has to be some sort of timeline here, a certain amount of time that exists, where the public has ample time to go through legislation, where congressmen and women, where senators have ample time to go through this legislation. I mean, I don't expect anybody to read 1,100 pages in a day or two and then fully grasp what's in it. Now, if you've ever looked at a bill, now there's a lot of times, okay, so this bill probably refers to several other bills that already exist, or laws that already exist. So then you'd have to be schooled on what all those laws are. Does it make sense? Is it in conflict? That's what I'm saying. This is why everything is so convoluted. This is why government is supposed to be small. This is why the American people are supposed to be in charge. Not a bunch of politicians, not a bunch of bureaucrats. Especially in today's age, when they're liked by nobody and they can't get along. But nevertheless, that's where we are. And President Trump has a big decision. What's he going to do? Because at the time of this recording, the president has not signed the bill. So it's not just the southern border, obviously. It has to do with keeping the government open for the remainder of the government's fiscal year, which runs to September. And he has till the 15th, which is tomorrow, to make up his mind. What we do know is that he is supposed to declare a national emergency, because this bill only provides the president with about $1.4 billion for his wall or barrier when he requested $5.7 billion. But as we have later come to find, I spoke about this yesterday with that Beltway lingo, poison pills, and now we have poison pills in landmines littered throughout this bill. You almost think you're in Syria with poison pills, poison gas, and landmines, but no, this is just a bill that the president may or may not sign tomorrow. Well, what are some of these poison pills? What are some of these landmines that maybe the president can't agree to and maybe he won't sign this thing? Well, for starters, Congress gave him less money. Congress said you can only build so many miles of wall, a lot less than what the president has requested, which was based off of what ICE agents and border experts have requested. So clearly the Democrats don't care. They don't consult the experts. But what Democrat does have to consult the expert? They're experts on everything in their own mind. So why waste the time asking people who risk their lives on the border, what do you really need? This is political. Let's not worry about it. Some other things that maybe the president can't agree to in this bill. Congress has said in this bill, the decision is up to you if you live in a district where this wall may or may not be going up. So local authorities have the final say as to whether or not a wall gets built. So now it becomes interesting to me, and I'm no lawyer, but if the president signs this, reluctantly or whatnot, if he signs this, to me that makes it seem as if he endorses it, right? If you didn't endorse it, you don't sign it. But then if you're going to sign it and then put your pen down and then say, I declare a national emergency, which completely negates everything that has to do with the border wall, then why sign it? Again, to me, that seems like some sort of argument they're going to raise in court. He signed it, he must have agreed with it, and then all of a sudden he changed his mind. Don't sign it. Declare the national emergency. Find the funds from the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense. Have the Army Corps of Engineers build it. And then have Congress go back and say, I'm going to sign a bill that keeps the government open, but you got to take this stuff out with the wall because you didn't even come close. So just take all that stuff out. And then if he can agree to the rest of it, then he shouldn't have any problem signing it. Just doesn't make any sense. Why endorse it and then say, I'm going to declare a national emergency? Especially if you knew you were going to declare the national emergency regardless. So just completely remove the drama, remove the politics from it, and say, this is what I'm going to do. Because $1.4 billion, it wasn't even close to what he was asking for. But that's going to continue. We'll see what happens tomorrow as to whether or not the president decides to sign this bill or let it go into another government shutdown, which would probably be short-lived, but who the hell knows with the division that we have in our politics. But that story will obviously continue and break tomorrow. Let me move on to some other news. I'm sure many of you are aware of former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has come out. He is starting his book tour. I assume he's going to need the proceeds from these book sales for a defense fund, but we'll get into that. So here's an article from NPR that sort of discusses what's going on here with Andrew McCabe and others within the Department of Justice and the FBI. Andrew McCabe, the former acting director of the FBI, says President Trump's treatment of the Bureau and its probe of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential campaign was so disturbing during the spring of 2017 that Justice Department officials discussed contacting cabinet members to initiate Trump's removal from office under the 25th Amendment. That remarkable statement comes from the man who took over when Trump fired FBI Director James Comey in May of 2017. But it is only the beginning of McCabe's revelations about the relationship between the nation's leading law enforcement agency and the 45th president. The tension in that relation is palpable, even in the title of McCabe's memoir, The Threat: How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump. The publication date is set for February 19th, but the most explosive assertions burst into the news Thursday, today, when CBS aired portions of its upcoming interview with McCabe, which is set to air on 60 Minutes this coming Sunday. That interview includes specific statements from McCabe regarding the 25th Amendment discussions and confirmation that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein once speculated about, quote, wearing a wire to record a conversation with Trump without the president's knowledge. The article continues. Those specific statements from 60 Minutes do not appear in the memoir, but have become the flashpoint for coverage of the book this week, and they fit with the extensive and detailed descriptions that McCabe does provide of the crisis atmosphere in the FBI and the larger Justice Department following Comey's firing. McCabe says that he personally took steps to, quote, safeguard the Bureau's investigation of Russian interference in case his own head would be the next to roll. He tells of working closely in those post-Comey days with Rosenstein, who subsequently named Robert Mueller to take over Russia probe as head of an Office of Special Counsel. Mueller is himself a former FBI director who had been a colleague of both Comey and McCabe. McCabe has said that Rosenstein in 2017 spoke of, quote, wearing a wire, end quote, when meeting with the president, meaning a microphone transmitter that could record statements that might matter to a future investigation or other legal proceeding. It should be lost on no student of history that President Nixon was brought down by tape recordings made of Oval Office conversations pertaining to crimes, collectively called Watergate. McCabe also said in interview clips aired on Thursday that Justice Department officials discussed which cabinet officials might be sympathetic to removing the president under the authority of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution. That amendment, ratified in 1967, deals with presidential succession and the prospect of presidential incapacity, creating a means for the vice president and others to step in if the president were deemed unfit to serve. You get that? The 25th Amendment really has to deal with corpus mentis. Let me let you in on a little secret about people in Washington, D.C. Nobody is corpus mentis. They're all off their rockers. You disagree? Let me know. The whole host of them. They're all nuts. They're all out of control with our money. Who's stomping them? Nobody. It just continues on and on and on. And this story gets to the greater things that I'm talking about with fireworks coming. And I'll get to that shortly. But lastly, here in this article, Rosenstein denied this version of the events of mid-May 2017 when they were first reported in the New York Times in September of 2018. That New York Times story relied on unnamed sources. One source who spoke to the Times anonymously said he thought Rosenstein might have been sarcastic in making the remark about wearing a wire. So now we have former FBI Director Andrew McCabe coming out and saying that Rosenstein was going to wear a wire, according to this article. We have Rosenstein who's come out and said that's not true. Well, one of them's lying, Who do you think it is? And don't forget, Rosenstein is going to be stepping down from the DOJ here shortly because he said once Bill Barr got confirmed, which he did, that he would be stepping down because he had the utmost faith and confidence in Bill Barr's ability to run the DOJ, which of course he had experience doing so under George H.W. Bush, and that he will be impartial and very fair to the Mueller investigation. So there's no reason for Rosenstein, with all of the theatrics that he's brought, to stay in the Department of Justice. Now we have Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who wants both of these gentlemen to appear in front of the committee. That would be McCabe and Rosenstein. Get them on the record. See who's going to swear to these statements under oath. Because we have a lot of people on the Republican side, on the Trump team, or Trump campaign, who have had their lives upended for lying to the FBI, lying to Congress, lying to a special prosecutor. So if justice is blind, then I guess these people better lawyer up. Because they're part of this government. They are part of an investigation that the Senate Intelligence Committee has said there is no Trump-Russia collusion. No crime has even been stated that it has been committed. We have no idea what the true parameters of Bob Mueller's investigation are, because we don't have a crime. They're looking for a crime, and that's not what we do in the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen. We investigate crimes. We don't investigate people. But as we slip further and further into a banana republic, it's no surprise that we are searching for a crime from a man that the left despises, that they're obsessed with, Trump derangement syndrome. This is all starting to come to an end. There is light at the end of this witch hunt. It really is a witch hunt on this president. And it has been. Now, that's not to say that investigations aren't going to continue. We already know that they most definitely will, barring some sort of declassification or move by the president or some other in his administration that just puts an end to all of this stuff. And it would just be completely frivolous, and to the most ardent of anti-Trumpers out there, that Adam Schiff would have to stop his investigations. That Jerry Nadler would have to stop his investigations, and any other Democratic chairman on whatever committee they chair wants to investigate. But Adam Schiff will continue. Jerry Nadler will continue. Hell, even the Senate Intelligence Committee is still winding down, but they've gone through 200 people. And they have nothing. And that's admitted not only from the Republicans, who chair the committee in the Senate, but from the Democrats as well. And, mind you, that what the Democrats are accusing the Trump campaign of doing is exactly what Hillary and her campaign did. Don't forget the British spy, former spy, Christopher Steele, and the dossier, which he got from Russian sources. Everybody was blaming Trump. Oh, he's talking with the Russians to get dirt on Hillary. There's no proof or evidence of that. You've had some meetings in Trump Tower that proved to be nothing. You have a Senate Intelligence Committee who interviewed 200 people. Both sides of the aisle say there's no collusion. But we know for a fact that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats hired Fusion GPS to go out there and get some dirt on Donald Trump. And what did they do? They got in touch with Christopher Steele, a former British spy, who got in contact with Russian spies And they produced a document that looked dirty on Donald Trump. And Nancy Pelosi comes out and has the audacity to say that Donald Trump projects. No, Nancy. No. Go take another shot of Botox. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's your party that's guilty of this. This is the fireworks that I'm talking about that's coming. You know, the question becomes who's lying, McCabe or Rosenstein. At this point, it really doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't make a difference because this is them starting to cover their own rear ends. They know the heat has been turned up. They know the hammer is coming down. McCabe wants to get out in front of the press. He wants to tell his side of the story before somebody else starts to control the narrative. And he wants to sell a book so he can get some money to pay some fancy attorneys to keep his ass out of jail. Don't kid yourself. The rats are starting to turn on each other. Just wait until this Mueller investigation comes to an end. Then, after that's sort of deflated and we all know that there's nothing there, then it's going to be a 180. Now the Democrats are going to have to defend themselves, and they're not going to be able to. Because if you have all of these Republicans and Trump supporters and members of Trump's cabinet and his team and his campaign going to jail, or at least being charged, and of course some have gone to jail, justice is supposed to be blind. You have to do the same thing to the Democrats. And of course, President Trump wasn't silent on this. He tweeted a couple things. Let me read these couple tweets to you here before I sign off. Disgraced FBI acting director Andrew McCabe pretends to be a, quote, poor little angel, when in fact he was a big part of the crooked Hillary scandal and the Russia hoax. A puppet for leaking James Comey. IG report on McCabe was devastating. Part of, quote, insurance policy in case I won. He continues, many of the top FBI brass were fired, forced to leave, or left. McCabe's wife received big dollars from Clinton people for her campaign. He gave Hillary a pass. McCabe is a disgrace to the FBI and a disgrace to our country. Make America great again. What the president is kindly reminding us of is the IG or Inspector General's report, where the report referred criminal charges against McCabe. So he's already in hot water. It's simmering. Wait until this thing comes to a boil. I will do my best to keep you informed. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Please leave comments. I'd love to hear from you. Let's make this interactive. This is the Capitol News. I am Alex Kreitis. Godspeed.